I have now been in business for over 30 years, believe it or not. Now, I started when I was 10, but in those 30 years, you certainly learn a lot. You learn a lot of things that you should do, and more importantly, you learn a lot of things that you shouldn't do. And recently I had a group of advisors. We were all talking about their business and what they're doing for their clients. And a question came up, and what they asked me was, look, you've been at this a long time, but not just in the wealth management business, but also in business in general and dealing with people. And if you had to have, distill it down to 10 lessons that you would tell either your kids or somebody you were mentoring or somebody who was just starting out, what are the 10 things that people should know? Now, I thought about this for quite a long time. I thought about, what are the 10 lessons? And certainly, I'm a big reader and I like to, take lessons from a lot of different areas. But I think I can come up with at least 10 that I think if people followed more religiously, it would make their life way better. And now, most of these lessons, again, these are not necessarily my lessons or I'm giving these lessons. This is simple observation, things that I've learned over the years, but also by looking at people who I admire. So people who really seem to have it together, and what are the qualities and lessons that I take from them in their lives. I also observe bad behavior, and this is also easy to spot. And I try to observe bad behavior in business, in individuals, and try to not be that person. In fact, that's a little thing that I say to myself all the time, like, don't be that person. And I think that if we look at what these lessons are and how we can apply them to our lives, and as I said, these are something that you could tell your kids or if you're mentoring somebody, what are the things that they should really keep in mind? And so lesson number one, and I think this is one of the most important lessons, is your personal brand is a thing, and it's important. Right? Whether you know it or not, you personally have a brand. Now, brand isn't a logo, brand isn't, what you wear. Brand is, and this is the best definition that I've ever heard of a brand, and it actually comes from Ted Matthews, and he actually wrote a great book called It Ain't the Logo, It's What People Think of You. And what he said was the best definition of a brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so what would you like people to say about you when you're not in the room? Now, brand is something you can control. Something that you have, over a lifetime, you can cater and be that person. So what do you think people say about you when you're not in the room? Do they say you're a happy person? Do you say that you're a professional? Do they say that you're competent? Do you say that you do what you say you're going to do? Now, the first thing to do is really try to understand what your brand is currently. Like, what do you think it is? Sometimes it's surprising what people think it is versus what other people think it is. People think that they're good at what they do and they're highly cooperative and they're a good team player. And then when they get a review from, let's say, their boss, they're like, you're none of those things. You're not very cooperative. You're hard to work with. People don't like you. And you're like, whoa, that's not something that I actually thought about. And it's a good idea to try to do an inventory every once in a while. What do I think my personal brand is? And write it on a piece of paper. And on the other side of the paper, what do I want my brand to be? How do I want to show up? How do I want people to see me? And how do I want people to talk about me when I'm not in the room? And this is a great exercise, and one that's sometimes enlightening and sometimes scary. But if you go down this path, and I recommend it to all the people that I mentor, start with, what do you want your personal brand to be? How do you want to show up? And always remember this great line that one of my business coaches once gave me. We judge ourselves on intent, and we judge others on their action. Well, in this particular case, when you're developing your personal brand, remember, people are going to judge you not on what you intended to do, it's what you actually did. So a very important lesson to learn. What's lesson number 2? Integrity. Have integrity, right, in all dealings. Now, what is integrity? And if this is a lesson that you have to take, what is it? Well, the easiest definition is somebody who does the right thing when no one's looking and there's nothing in it for you, right? Are you the type of person who does the right thing all the time? And that's integrity. When something is wrong, you stand up. When something is, there's an easy way and a hard way, and the easy way is not necessarily the right way, you do the hard thing. It's always the people who are looking for shortcuts and people who don't take consequences when things go wrong. You know, I think back through my career and I think about the people that I admire the most. And the people that I admire the most are usually the people who can actually admit when they're wrong. And the best behavior that I could replicate is when things go wrong, and they do, or if you do something wrong, which we all do, right, the best thing to do is simply just to admit we're wrong, apologize, and try to make it right. The worst type of people are the people who don't admit they're wrong, who have a million excuses for their bad behavior. Oh, I'm just like that. Oh, is this circumstance or that circumstance? It's not my fault, or somebody in accounting did it, or somebody in compliance did it, or somebody else did it. It's always somebody else. Those are the people that I look down on, because I think those are the people who are not taking responsibility for whatever has happened, and they don't have the integrity to simply apologize for what happened, accept responsibility, and try to make it right. So going forward, a lesson that I would always try to instill on everyone is always have integrity. Always do the right thing, even when no one's looking, and even if there's nothing in it for you. So what's lesson number 3? Transparency. Be transparent. Once again, I think about people who I admire and what I admire about them. And the people I admire the most are the people you don't have to guess, right? They're transparent, right? There's times where I've been accused of giving probably too much information, or speaking my mind in the wrong setting, or saying something that probably offends other people. And that's not necessarily my intent, but my intent is to be transparent. Right? My intent is to be somebody who will always tell you the truth, because there is no free lunches. And just in a recent event, people are telling me, oh, this is free. They had an ad. This is free. That's free. The other thing's free. Well, first of all, no one's that dumb. Everybody knows that there's no such thing as a free lunch. But instead of being transparent about what was actually going on, they made this sort of bait and switch type of thing that made people think that, this was one way when it obviously was another way. So once again, I go through my life lessons over the last 30 years and the people that I admire the most. And the people that I admire the most tell you their agenda up front. Right? You don't have to guess. You don't have to wonder where you stand. You don't have to wonder where they make their money or why they're doing what they're doing. They outright tell you. And I think that's a great way to be. And if we can all be more transparent and be more honest, I guess, with people about what our motivations are and what their motivations are, I think the whole world would be a better place. Lesson number 4, never wrestle with a pig. This is a lesson that I've learned the hard way. It's something that my father used to teach me. He said, never wrestle with a pig, because you both get dirty, but the pig likes it. Now, it took years for me to understand what that meant. But think about in your own day-to-day. Have you ever had an email debate with somebody where you're going back and forth debating a particular topic? Have you ever had, a argument, let's say, and at the end of the day, the other person really is just trying to make their point, and no matter what you say, you are not going to make any difference whatsoever. And people spend an inordinate amount of time being argumentative, going back and forth, again, going back to what I was talking about earlier, saying I'm not wrong, you were wrong. And this is the lesson. And this is the lesson my dad taught me. This is wrestling with pigs. Right? Going back and forth, this point counterpoint is never a good thing. It's always a bad thing. Never get involved in any of these things, especially things that could drag you down. Always take the high road. It's just easier just to walk away and say, that's what you believe and that's fine. There are people, again, who spend so much of their time and energy trying to prove they're right, or in the case, as I said, in wrestling with pigs, is going back and forth with people who you know just aren't going to ever get what you're saying, and that's okay. So, the lesson that I would take here, and lesson number 4, is whenever you find yourself wrestling with a pig, simply walk away. Lesson number 5 should be an easy one. Show up on time, right? Be on time. This is not a shouldn't be a life lesson. This should be good manners. But every one of us, me, everybody I've ever met, you always have one friend, at least one, who's always late. Like literally always late. And to the point where they're always late that I give them a different time to meet. If we're all going to meet at 7, I tell them we're going to meet at 6, so that at least they'll be within range of when we're actually going to meet. These people are very frustrating, and I don't know how everybody else deals with them, but somebody who is always late, eventually I just won't deal with them. So if a person is always late, I probably won't deal with them. If a company is always late and never delivers on time, I probably won't deal with that company anymore. If there's any type of interaction where somebody tells you that they're going to do this in this time frame, and on a consistent basis doesn't make that, eventually, going back to one of the things I was talking about before, all integrity is lost, all trust is lost, and you just don't believe them. All because of a single action that is not very difficult. Again, going back to life lessons, I was taught growing up that if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late. And the reason this is because time, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, is your most precious commodity. It is number one. So if somebody is late, what that basically is saying to you, at least what it says to me, is my time is worth more than your time. So I will put you on my agenda. And to me, that is probably the biggest sign of disrespect, is wasting somebody else's time, because time is your most precious asset. And as a result, those people slowly become either less and less part of your life, or if it's a business, you do less and less business to the point where you're not doing business with them at all. So a very important lesson, show up on time. Lesson number 6, when in doubt, read. Now, it's easy in this particular day and age. We're downloaded with information from all over the place, right? And as an adult male, I probably spend way too much time on TikTok. But I've spent enough time on social media, and now even what we're going to call mainstream media, to know that now I almost distrust everything on the internet. I almost distrust anything just because it's on social media. Because we're in so-called information age, but not everything is accurate. One of the questions I'm always asking, like, who actually wrote that article? Because they're saying, well, this happened or that happened or the other thing happened. I'm like, but who actually wrote that? So I've learned this lesson is when in doubt, read. Now, I'm a big reader. Certainly I've shared the books that I've enjoyed over the years. But personally, I don't actually believe something until I can source it from 3 different places that actually give me accurate information. On top of that, whenever I have a problem or an issue or some obstacle that I'm trying to overcome, whether that's personally or professionally, my fallback position is read everything that you can on the topic, and generally the answers will be there somewhere. It's one of the great gifts that my grandmother gave me, is the ability to research and read. Which leads us to lesson number 7. And again, this is a lesson that certainly, my kids, my nieces, my nephews, anyone who will listen, the one thing I tell them is education is never wasted. Now, this was a lesson from my grandmother. She used to tell me that the one thing that no one can ever take from you is education. People can take your money, they can take your assets, they can take your time, they can take your freedom, they can take everything from you. But what they cannot take from you is the things that you have learned and the ability to learn new things to expand your skills. And I've seen people over the years who, as a result of this lifelong curiosity and this lifelong pursuit of learning, of education, I've seen people lose everything I have. And yet, because of everything they've learned, they made it all back in a very short period of time. Because once you have those lessons, once you have the knowledge and the ability to learn, that's something that no matter what happens, no one can ever take away from you. So it's certainly a lesson, as I said, that I tell everybody who I mentor, and everyone who I'm related to, focus on education. Education is never wasted. Lesson number 8, time is your only asset, so spend it wisely. Right? As I talked about a little bit earlier, the most precious commodity that we possess is time. The difference between somebody who is highly successful and somebody who is not successful is generally how they use their time. Remember this, we all are given the exact same amount of time. We all have 40 to 60 hours of work time in a week, and you have so much leisure time, and you only have so much time in the year. But we all have equally the same amount of time. There's no advantage or disadvantage. What I have seen highly productive people do is use their time far more effectively. It's like taking time off. I know people who take a lot of time off, they just choose to do it at work, as opposed to other people who are highly focused on the things that make the difference. And by being highly, highly focused on those things that actually make a difference, they can do so much more in the exact same amount of time. So remember, you only have so many days on this planet. Use them wisely. At the end of the day, the only commodity any of us really has is time. And it's where you can focus that time is going to give you 100% of your results. Lesson number 9, the simple answer is the best answer. We, as human beings, have this crazy tendency to take the simplest of concepts and make it as complex as possible. And I don't know why. As I said, I've been in business for a long time. By the way, I'm no babe in the woods at this either. I have also taken incredibly simple concepts and made them incredibly complex for no real good reason. Now, once again, I can't take credit for this particular lesson. This is Akram's Razor, and Akram Razor simply states that the simplest answer is generally the right answer. Whatever is the most obvious thing is probably the answer. And yet, once again, as human beings, instead of having a simple solution to something, we try to create overly complex solutions. We think that we're doing a good job by making it more complex and continuing to add to it. But the people that I admire the most are the people who are able to take a highly complex concept or product or, really idea, anything, and turn it into something incredibly simple that people can understand and people can buy into. So always remember this lesson. The simple answer is always the best answer. And finally, lesson number 10, choose your mentors wisely. Always have a mentor. And this doesn't have to be a physical mentor, although I personally, I like to spend a lot of my time mentoring people and helping them. It's been my mission, is helping advisors build a better business, helping people be better at delivering results, focusing on the right things. But even in my own life, my mentors have been people who I admire. Right? As I said, I've done a lot of reading, and the reason that I do is because I love the line, I have seen farther because I've stood on the shoulders of giants. Right? There's so many people out there to learn from. And again, going back to one of my other lessons about when in doubt, read, right? Whenever I want to know about doing something, I find who is the best people who have ever done this. Who are they? And what's their story? And if we can listen to their story and learn from their story, that's far better than us going through the trials and tribulations to get there. I've also on the show, endorsed Masterclass, and if you haven't heard from it, it's a fantastic learning platform that you can sign up for. But Masterclass, I like it because you're not just learning a topic, you're learning that topic from literally the top of the game. You're learning strategy from Richard Branson. You're learning about brand from Bob Iger. You're learning how to cook from the head chef of French Laundry, the highest rated restaurant in North America. These are the things that I would always recommend as a lesson. Choose your mentors. Right? Learn from what other people have done and other people's mistakes, and it makes life so much easier. Now, in conclusion, none of these lessons should be earth-shattering or new. Right? I've stole all of them, and in fact, some of them you would even call cliches. You've heard them so often. But there's a difference between hearing something and acting on something. And hopefully that some of these things have helped you understand, how am I applying these life lessons into my life? How can I maybe pass some of these life lessons on to my kids or my nieces or my nephews or other people who are important to me? How can I mentor other people in these life lessons? And more importantly, how can I live them? Right? Because again, there's a whole difference of hearing something and living something. So I hope that you write them down. I hope that you look at how they would apply to you. And these are rules that if you just stick to them for long enough, they can make your life better. So I'd love to hear about your life lessons. I'd like to hear what you consider a life lesson that you sort of live by, that you would teach your kids, you would teach your family members, you would help with mentoring people. And I'd love you to share them with me. Just find me either on Instagram or LinkedIn, and how you find those is just go to the show notes and the link's right there. So I'd love to hear from you. So today, I'm going to share with you the 10 life lessons that I have learned over my 30-year career in the wealth management business. I hope you'll enjoy them, and I hope you can apply them.